Welcome to the Payoff Podcast, brought to you by Quantrax. This is a show for debt recovery leaders who know the industry is changing, even if the conversations around them are not. Many collection operators are stuck doing what they've always done, uncertain how to move forward and wary of the unknown, especially when it comes to technology. This podcast will help you see things differently. Here we explore practical strategies, smarter systems, and leadership choices that help you move past the familiar, step into new opportunities, and actually improve performance. Each episode features real-world insights from operators and executives who have faced the same challenges, experimented, and discovered what truly pays off. No hype, no recycled talking points. Just thoughtful, actionable conversations about growth, technology, and leadership in today's receivables environment. This is the Payoff Podcast, not the same old conversation. Welcome to the Payoff Podcast, sponsored by Quantrax. I'm your host, Andrew Wahl. Today we're joined by David Byrne. David is Director of Product and Application Support at our sponsor, Quantrax. But before joining, he was a veteran collections operator with nearly 30 years of experience. One of the many skill sets he developed, running chatbots inside agencies. Over 8 years and across multiple organizations, he turned chatbots into a core part of their operations. As you'll hear, the chatbots brought in millions of dollars in immediate money, with much more in potential money. David brings both an operator's eye for detail and a strategist's focus on cost, staffing, and scalability. So today we wanted to learn from his hands-on experience how automation can reshape the economics of a collection shop. Welcome, David. Great to have you on the podcast.
Andrew, thanks for having me. It's going to be fun. One of my favorite topics.
So you ran a chatbot for years at multiple agencies. What did those early days teach you about what a collections bot can and cannot do well?
Whew, we got to go back in time a little bit. So let's see. My first experience with a chatbot, we demoed a couple. I was with a smaller agency, less than 15 to 20 user shop typically. And we wanted to try to, expand. Labor costs were starting to creep up a little bit. And so we were looking at, cutting edge technology. So we looked at some chatbots. We were currently a RMX user, so we demoed, of course, Quantrax. And that's the one we went with. Various reasons, but the biggest one is the integration, the comfort. We already had the CRM in place, so we were early adapter. We were like the second RMX user to use it, so we expected some bugs and some challenges. Early days taught you that the first lesson I learned was it wasn't a set it and forget it, right? You went through the system controls and you built this cool bot and it talked to you and you tested it a couple times. You're like, wow, this thing's pretty neat. But there's more to it. You have to continually test and develop, and how AI gets smarter the more it interacts with people. So it was kind of growing. So you wanted to hear it and continually test it. So that was a big lesson in the beginning is, hey, you've got to really listen to this thing. Log in as a consumer and go through the different prompts and say the different words and things. So that was a big learning curve. Other stuff was just, how do you introduce it to your staff, right? Because the staff is like, hey, where's this thing coming from and what is it going to do to my paycheck, right? So you had to kind of introduce this piece of new technology as a teammate, somebody that will work alongside agents, that won't affect their commissions or their collections, but will enhance it. And how do you do that? Well, you use it as part of your strategy. It becomes, part of your strategy. So that was a learning experience because I'd never really introduced something that could potentially compete with an hourly agent, right? It wasn't a dialer or a new workflow, that enhances an agent's capability. This actually competed with one. And how do you get them to wrap their mind, in their mind and those challenges around that? So that was, getting their buy-in was something new. So those were the two biggest, things that I learned early on and how to overcome those challenges.
You mentioned that it's not a set and forget it kind of thing. So what does that mindset, look like when it comes to weekly or monthly routines? How do you actually operationalize that?
Well, the best thing I can compare it to is compliance auditing. Typically, an agency will have a compliance department or a compliance auditor that may listen to live calls, and they may listen to, they may have agents like on a rotation, or they're listening, or they may be buying a service that screens calls and looks for words and influxes of voice and that type of thing. Well, the bot is kind of the same way, especially early on. You had to have somebody listen to it. You would not only want them to log in as a consumer, go through each steps, whether it was the web portal or the phone bot. You also wanted to log in as a compliance person and listen to it and watch and see. Um, so the web bot, if you will, you were talking or typing back and forth. So you would want to read those transactions, read the notes and things, and make sure that the bot was understanding correctly. When I said, when the agent said, "Hi, what's my balance?" You wanted the bot to respond, "Hi, this is your balance," not "You said you wanted to pet a cat." No, I don't want to pet a cat. What's my balance? Oh, I'm sorry, you wanted to pet a dog. No, so you were looking for weird things that you kind of see and make fun of on TikTok reels, but so you were making sure you didn't show up on TikTok. Other than that, it was just, a lot of going through and seeing how this thing worked. It was new for everybody. So that's what you do. And you do it on a rotation, just like you do a collector. If you audit your collectors once a week, you audit the bot once a week, especially in the beginning, right? Maybe even more. Maybe you treat it like a new collector, right? Where you actually, looking at every interaction for the first couple weeks to see how it reacted. And then as your comfort level rises, you can back that off a little bit.
So what were the most common technical issues that you've seen? Do you just catch those only by the kind of that monitoring, or was there anything else that you did to stop it before it impacted a lot of consumers?
Well, a couple things. The monitoring was the biggest, right? Consumers would call and say, "Hey, I tried to make a payment on the bot and it didn't understand me." That was a great call because you went back and you could listen to that and see where it fell short. But it didn't happen a lot. The technology was good out the gate. So there wasn't a lot of things that you had to catch, but there were a few. Like sometimes you would get stuck in a loop. Like our bot at the time if you wanted to talk to an agent, you said agent. So if early on, if a user might have said operator, it might get stuck in a loop and come back and say, "I'm sorry, I didn't understand you," because it was looking for the word agent. Stuff like that. And that's just an example. But you watched for that and you listened for that. So yeah, I mean it's just monitoring and listening to the technology. But out of the gate, it was really good. And of course,
I'm curious about
this
that
was a I don't know.
the authentication step, and that critical piece of that. What methods did you land on, and what kind of impact did it have on completion rates? How did you make sure that people were, properly validated for what they're needed to do?
Well, that's a great question because first it was scary Terry, right? Nobody, you locked that thing down to where you almost had to, withdraw blood and submit it online, and then you could get into the bot, right? I mean, it was tight. We made it as tight as possible because it was new, and our compliance people were like, "Hey, I don't want this thing talking to Joe Smith about, Jack." Bill or whatever, or I don't want it yelling at an attorney. Or I mean, nobody knew what it was going to do. It was new. So it was like, look, if you're not Andrew Wahl, you're not getting in, and we want to make sure that you're the right Andrew, right? So we tightened it up, and you might have had to have a social security number. You might have had to have your account number, whatever it was. But what we found was that people don't necessarily want to give that information, right? Especially because guess what? Not only is it new to you, it's new to the consumer. Those 20 million people that you have in your database
Yeah.
probably haven't used something like this. So you would watch it and you would see your authentication rates. And then the good thing about our bot, that we were using is that we had control. We could control what we allowed people to access. So we might say, okay, you don't need your account number because we believe that identifying information, maybe the last four of your social and the last four of your phone number, that's enough to say, okay, this is definitely Andrew, right? Because the account number sometimes gets lost on a piece of mail or they can't find it or whatever the case may be. And then we would look at those rates because the good thing about having an integrated real-time bot is that I could see when people were getting to the authentication step and then when they were dropping off. And as you made these changes, you could see, hey, they're moving forward. Because this thing only is top value when they get past the authentication rate. Up to the authentication rate, it's no value to the agency, right? They have to get past it and take a step or two or three or resolve,
For sure.
ideally, to get it. So yeah. So you would watch it and you would make changes. You would, run it through your compliance department or your attorney and say, hey, what do you think about the last four of the social? It's really kind of tricky. What about the date of birth and the zip code? And,
Mhm.
or, what about the account number and the name? If I have an account number and my full name, would that pass, the mustard for you and that type of thing. But the easier it is to authenticate, the more transactions you will have.
Right.
So,
So how did you, strike that balance between compliance and documentation while keeping the conversation simple enough that people actually follow through on payment and you deliver that value back to the agency?
trial and error.
Yeah.
$100 bills to the compliance person. Please let me do this. No. All kidding aside, it's trial and error, right? You adjust. And every agency is going to be different where their threshold lies and in this what they're willing to do because if you loosen it up it is possible that maybe somebody does get the wrong account. It's unlikely, but it's possible. So you need to have controls in place. And of course, you have PCI and you have all these other governing bodies that want to make sure things are safe and secure. So all that has to pass. So that's number one, right? You have to make sure that the consumer's data is protected, your company's protected, right? All kidding aside, those are the most important. But then from there, it's how can let's cross check that box. We're protected. Now, how can I make this experience better for the consumer? And it starts with that authentication. So you have a balance. And, typically, two pieces of identifying information is what you're looking for. So, if the phone number matches or the date of birth matches or the name and the social match, or you can put more weight on one, social security number is pretty guaranteed, right? So that's, that weighs higher than something else. So trial and error, but you get through
Right.
it.
I mean, AI has come a long way in 8 years. Agencies and collection operations have to be seeing all kinds of different AI kind of options that are out there. How is from your experience, how has it changed in terms of these types of chatbots and how it works?
Oh, it's just growing. I mean, it's just getting better and better. Before this meeting, as I was preparing for it, trying to refresh, because I knew you were going to ask me questions from a long time ago. I read a LinkedIn article, and it said, I don't even remember who it was, but it was the banking and arm industry saved 1,500 FTEs through AI up to date. Of course, that's a huge spectrum, right? Of banking and credit unions, and we're probably in there somewhere. But the idea is it's getting bigger. It's getting bigger. It's getting smarter. The voice, when you used to talk to it, we have the bot that we deploy has three different ways of reaching the bot. So you have like the script based, what we call the CSP, the customer service portal. It's very scripted. You just click, click, enter, enter, that type of thing. We also have talking bots. We have multilingual bots, but the voices are getting better and better and better. And as a matter of fact, it's getting so good that some states now require you to say, "I am a chatbot."
Right.
How scary is that, right? I mean, they're making you say it because they don't want a consumer to think that it's a real person. So,
Well, I was going to ask about the consumer response too, because consumers are becoming much more accustomed to this, to the point that they may even prefer to just deal with a chatbot than a real person. And I wonder what your experience has been on that front. Like, how are consumers reacting to this, and what are they sort of more accepting? It must potentially cause some issues with compliance if people, don't really understand how it works.
you know, it, it, it's funny you mentioned a story. I was in a meeting with a very highly regarded, I mean, expert in this industry, longtime vet, just a great guy, very knowledgeable, and one of the power players. And he told me, he said, self-service will never work in the collection industry. And I said, I have $20 million that says you're wrong. And here's the deal. I wasn't convinced when I originally brought this to the owner of the company I was working for back when Quantrax just released it. I wasn't convinced that it would replace agents. I'm still not. It's not going to replace agents. I wasn't convinced how well it was going to do. What I thought was this will give our salespeople a cool tool to run out and say we are open 24 hours a day now. And it's not an IVR because at the time everybody had an IVR. Push one to do this and enter your data. That horrible thing but me, I was like, hey, for transactional pricing, and this thing's a great deal. You can tell, our clients that if somebody wants to pay their bill at 3 o'clock in the morning or dispute or file bankruptcy or whatever the case may be, notify us of these crazy things, they can do it. Maybe they work nights and they want to do it or whatever. So, fast forward, 8, 10 years, and now it's like, wow, um, it's part of a workflow now. And, but, the consumer reaction, luckily, we didn't have to do this because the world did it for us, right? Along came this funky illness called COVID, right? And everybody started working from home and everybody started, I'm not touching, I don't want to be in front of somebody, right? I want to self-serve. Walmart decided it was a great idea to have one cashier and 50 self-serve kiosks now, right? Where you could stand in the never-ending line because you want to make a statement, or you can go over there and check yourself out and leave. So we're getting used to self-serve gas stations now. You walk to buy a pack of gum. I was shocked, and it's self-service kiosk there, and the dude behind the gas station is selling cigarettes and beer and playing on his phone. That's it. Anything else, go self-serve. So whether you like it or not, whether consumers like it or not, their opinion really doesn't matter because they have to use it now. That's the way the world's going. So we've kind of slid in there. The value add is that nobody really liked talking to us anyways. It wasn't like, the nice old lady at Walmart that checked you out. They didn't want to talk to us because we were bill collectors.
Yeah.
So now they have a way to take care of their bill without ever speaking to us. So it's kind of very seldom does this industry win. This is a win. So this is a win.
With all the changes, there's a lot more options out there in terms of AI chatbots and AI different tools. So let's talk about, you mentioned it before, but let's talk more about platform integration. How does this real-time integration with a platform change your approach as an operator to building dialogues compared with an API-based chatbot that is outside the core system that's kind of bolted on? How's it different?
So it's night and day. So there's lots of chatbots out there, like you said. Our CRM, obviously I represent Quantrax. Our CRM, we can integrate with different chatbot providers. Luckily, we have our own. But here's the difference. When we build an API for a chatbot, a bolt-on chatbot provider, for example, that's usually, we send the file to them, with all this data. consumers access it, and then that night sometime or the next morning or whatever, they send this big file back or all these changes that may have happened. In our industry, that's a long time. And here's a great example of that being completely integrated. If a consumer reaches the chatbot today, this morning, and they go on the chatbot and they say they file bankruptcy, we know about it within seconds.
Right.
Right? We can apply a smart code that alerts an agent. We can remove the phone numbers. We can do all that cool stuff. If you go to a different chatbot and you say, I filed bankruptcy, if that chatbot can even handle that, a lot of times they're just basically glorified payment portals. But if they can actually take that bankruptcy information and update it, you don't know till tomorrow. Well, if that account's on the dialer, guess what? You're going to call that person. They're going to say, hey, I let your chatbot know 3 hours ago that I filed bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Big problem, right? Especially a compliance risk. That's just one of the many things. We have, it's funny, at a much larger shop where the bot was producing much, much more, millions of dollars. We would have consumers that literally would pay the bot and then call in and let the agent know that they made their payment. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen. Because they wanted the agent to know that their payment was made, but they didn't really want to make it with them. They wanted to make it with the bot. Okay. It wasn't very many, but some people did that, and because they still weren't trusting, right, of this new tech. Even though it's been around, they're still trying to. They want, grandma wants to make sure that the payment got posted. And I get it. I understand. So that stuff was kind of funny, but the integration allowed the agent to see right then. Yep, I see your payment. I see you went on the bot, 13 minutes ago. You made your payment. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you next month. So another thing with us is we have developed ways to transfer stuff to the chatbot. So agents, for example, sometimes it takes people a long time to get their credit card out, and there's PCI DSS regulations. Everybody's working from home now, so let's transfer this call to the chatbot. Let the chatbot take your payment, so my agents never have to touch your credit card information. So you can't call me back and say, hey David, we got an issue. We got this weird charge, and we've got 1,000 people working from home, whatever. So transfer to the chatbot, they could talk to the chatbot. So integration really makes a difference. And when I was looking and exploring chatbots, it was three major things that I was looking at. Compliance, of course, because I wanted to make sure that we were safe as an agency. Customer satisfaction, the experience when they log in, how the flow was, how it looked, and then integration to the point of how soon will I know what happened. And there's no sooner than immediate, right? It doesn't get any faster. So that was a big deal. So yeah, I mean that was very important in the decision making for us.
Well, so for an agency who's thinking about turning to chatbots and trying to apply them into their own system just for the first time, what do you recommend is the minimum viable operational plan? What do they need to do that they need to have in place before really going live?
They need to decide how they want to integrate this chatbot into their daily routines, because this is almost like hiring a new person, right? How does that new person fit in? What are they going to do? What is their responsibilities? What's their return on investment, right? Because you don't hire somebody and expect them to break even. You hire people, and at least production people is what we're speaking of. You hire production people to make a profit, right? So how will that person fit in? And the same thing with the bot. How is it going to fit? What are you looking to gain? Is this like me 15 years, 12 years ago, whatever it was now? Am I looking for a sales tool, to be able to say, hey, I could take payments and I could take disputes and all this good stuff in the middle of the night? Or am I looking for something that generates revenue? Well, if you're getting a chatbot today, you're looking for something that generates revenue. And then where does that fit in your workflow, right? Today you have all these omni-channel, it's a great big buzzword running across the industries, omni-channel, and then of course now AI. But So where does the omni-channel meet the AI, right? Where do they intersect, and what do you want to do with them? Have that discussion and get the buy-in from the people that you depend on, your managers, your frontline supervisors, and your agents. Explain to them what you're doing and why you're doing it and how it benefits them. At first, the agents were, I'm not, I don't trust that thing. His name was Alex, right? Well, I don't trust Alex. But then it got to where, our agents were like, here's the link. Next month, just click this to make your payment instead of bothering me, because they could go on to something else, right? The idea is to free up your agents for complex phone calls, things that really need that personal touch. And there's plenty of those guys. It's not we're going to replace an agent. Now, will it help with attrition? Will it help with labor cost? I mean, all those things are certainly part of it down the road, but it is never going to replace collectors in general across the board. So I don't know what
Yes.
you asked me, but that's the answer you got.
Yeah, no, I think that's ideal. That gives pretty clear instructions, and I think you've given everyone a lot to think about and a lot to consider. So thanks a lot for your time, David, and hope to be able to have you back on at some other point.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's it for today's episode of the Payoff Podcast. Thanks again to our sponsor, Quantrax, creators of the RMX debt recovery management platform. Find out what you might be missing in debt collection software. Learn more at quantrax.com.